Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Cinemacast right here on our YouTube channel. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below if you enjoy our content. This video is also uploaded on our Rumble channel. If you guys want to follow us over there, link is down below in the description section. So, excuse me for today. I sound a little off. The seasonal cold finally got to me, but we're going to muddle through this. So, we are past Valentine's Day, and I want to really do this movie. I finally saw it. Now, Valentine's Day, every holiday, just about every single holiday has a horror movie related to it, attached to it in some way. Even Easter. Easter, the resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Even Easter has its own horror movies on there. There's Easter Bunny Massacre or something. But every holiday pretty much has a movie that is based around some kind of slasher event. Your Christmas has slasher movies. Halloween has a dozen movies. Especially the aptly named Halloween, Michael Myers, Halloween, Halloween night is his night. You even got horror movies, slasher movies for Thanksgiving, There was even one that came out back in 2022, I believe it was, called Thanksgiving, and it was a good movie. I did a review on it. You guys can find that right here on the channel if you guys want to go back and see my review on Thanksgiving. But then comes Valentine's Day, of all days, the day of love, the day for couples, the day that people who are single, people who are still virgins at heart, the one holiday that people, men and women all around, whether you're in elementary school, high school, adult, whatever, it's that one day where people are like, I just get it over with. It's done. I hate this fucking day, that kind of thing. But you also got a handful of horror movies, slasher movies to go along with it. You got movies like My Bloody Valentine. Now, there was the version My Bloody Valentine that came out in, I think it was the 70s or the 80s. And it revolved around a minor in the town, goes around stalking people on Valentine's Day, who celebrate Valentine's Day. And if they're caught celebrating it, he comes out to kill you, basically, And then, of course, the remake came out in 2009, and it was a really decent remake. It was in 3D. I saw it in theaters. It was pretty good. I enjoyed the 3D effects. They were done very well. And you also had movies that came out in the early 2000s. This was back when I was in high school. Movies like Valentine, starring Denise Richards, And that was about this kid who was bullied, he was picked on by a bunch of girls, in, I think it was in middle school, elementary school or middle school, He wanted somebody to be his Valentine, and they all played a serious prank on him or something. I forgot what the plot was, but I do know they all grown up, and then they feel like that same boy, he is the killer, and they call him the Cupid killer. He wears the Cupid mask, and he gets his revenge on all the girls that picked on him in violent ways. That was it was a dud, but it's something that I do watch to this day. It's just one of those movies that it just holds a nostalgia factor to me when watching it. Because it was back in high school. High school is the primitive time to find your sweetheart, just find that one person you have a crush on and just go all for it, It's just something about Valentine's Day that gets to people. It's like, what is it about it, that makes somebody a serial killer, where they're just sickened by the sight of a couple, kissing and making out or having sex or something like that. And then comes a movie, this movie here, just released, called Hard Eyes. And this is not your typical American slasher horror film. This is not your typical slasher film. This is a film where couples will go to the theater to see it, and they will enjoy it. I will say there are couples out there that will enjoy this. This movie actually has an 82% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It does. But when I get into it, okay, so when you go to see Hard Eyes, you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to go see a real shitty slasher movie. It takes place on Valentine's. This is an American romantic comedy slasher film. Yes, I read that right. This is an American romantic comedy slasher film. It's a rom-com. And this is I don't you don't see too many of those movies out there that fit all three of those genres into one and make it, or try to make it, at least enjoyable. You're not going to the movie to see you're not going to the movies to see a straight up slasher horror. You're not going to the movies to see a straight up a cheesy romantic comedy. You got a mixture of all three. And when I watched it, and I was expecting, okay, there's going to be some comedic elements in this movie, but to my surprise, and I'm just sitting there, it is very tongue in cheek with me with this movie. And this movie stars young actors and actresses. Was this Olivia Holt, she is also a singer, I believe, and she starred in a Disney XD series, Kicking It. Never watched it. I never got into Disney. And then you got Mason Gooding, and I remember seeing this guy in a couple films, and I couldn't quite place him until I looked him up, and I was like, oh yeah, he was in Scream 5 and Scream 6 as Chad Meeks Martin. And of course, he's going to be in Scream 7, which is coming up next year. So yeah, if you've seen the last two Scream movies, you will recognize that face. But there's also some familiar faces to see in this movie. One of them I really couldn't place because he didn't look too familiar to me, and that was David Sawa. If anybody remembers David Sawa, he was one of the heartthrobs back in the 90s, along with like Jonathan Taylor Thomas, that kind of thing. He was in a movie, actually he was in Wild America with Jonathan Taylor Thomas, and I think it was Scott Barslow, yeah. And of course, he was in movies like Little Giants, Casper, SLC Punk. He was also in Final Destination, and a handful of other movies, throughout the last couple decades. But then you also got Jordana Brewster, who is no stranger to the horror genre. And Jordana Brewster, if you don't know who she is Dom's sister in the Fast and the Furious franchise, Mia Toretto. So yeah, if you've seen any of the Fast and the Furious movies, Mia Toretto, that's her. You'll definitely recognize her. But she does look like she aged a lot. She's like, what, 40? Yeah, 44 years old. She was in a lot of movies, mostly the Fast franchise. But horror movie-wise, she was in Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning. So, she is no stranger to the horror genre. But yeah, there's a few other actors in it. There's not too many actors to really point out. So basically, the plot of the movie is over how do I put it? Over a few years, past few years, as the story goes, there is this killer known as Heart Eyes. He wears this, he or she, we shall put that, wears this mask that has heart eyes, as you can see in the poster. Now, what's unique about that mask is something that I actually take a liking to with this slasher, with this killer. It's I don't want to say it's too unique, but it's kind of unique. So the mask, especially in a couple scenes where it's very dark and he can't see, the eyes, the heart eyes, light up, and it's night vision, and he can see everything in like a bright red night vision, to get by. So that is pretty unique. and he also wields a machete. He's got a couple of daggers, and he's even got a miniature crossbow. So that's how he goes after his prey. He has a crossbow. He's got a machete. So yeah, it definitely, there is a little bit of gruesome violence in this, which is expected for something like this. If you're the gory type, if you're into gory horror movies, this is up your alley. So over a span of a few years, you got this serial killer who calls himself Hard Eyes. He moves from different cities around the U.S., and every Valentine's Day, he kills multiple couples. And of course, you move to the present day, which is like, I think, year 3 or 4. He moves to the Seattle area to murder couples, of course. And that's pretty much how the movie begins. Now, the way the movie begins, it's very, very cheesy to me. I will say that to spoil it a little bit. It's very cheesy. It opens up with this very cheesy thing, and you got Lone Star song "Amazed" playing, and it's just this setting where you got this guy who's just proposing to his girlfriend, and it turns out to be like some photographic setup and shit. And then of course, the Hard Eyes, the killer pops out and pursues to chase and kill off this couple, and it's just, everything is just very cheesy. And then basically the whole story is, you got this girl named Allie who's played by Olivia Holt. Is it Hot or Holt? Yeah, Holt. I'm sorry, Olivia Holt. And she is a what is it? She works. Yeah, she's a pitch designer for a jewelry company, and she was pitching some kind of commercial, and it turned out it was a bad thing, and then they bring in this one guy to help her. His name is Jay, who's played by Mason Gooding. And of course, this whole thing plays out where she has a thing against relationships. She's looking for that particular person to start a relationship with, and she vows not to fall in love, but she ends up falling in love. You got a movie that starts out as like, okay, this is gonna be a very cheeky horror movie or slasher movie, and then it turns into a romantic comedy scene where you got this slasher, this whole other plot playing out in the background, and intertwines with the story. So there's really no need to go too much into depth with how the story goes, but just by the way the whole thing plays out, it's almost like how do I put this? Almost a parody of romantic comedy movies and a parody of slasher movies, and you put them together, and to some people it seems like an okay, decent blend, just to make the film pretty fun and enjoyable. But to somebody like me, like it was, I want to say I was entertained, but it was, the whole time I'm just shaking my head at every possible scene out there. But then again, how many horror movies do you have out there that are horror comedies? That's something that will make you laugh. I wouldn't mind if this was a horror comedy, but when you add the romantic drama experience to it, a rom-com, when you add the just the genre of it being a romantic comedy to it, it's like, I want to say 60% of this movie basically is the romantic comedy scene. You got this couple who's falling in love with each other, falling for each other, while everything else is happening on the side. But it's just, to me, most of this movie just feels like an overrated, very poor dialogue based, cheesy romantic comedy. And then when the killer comes out and the chase scenes begin, and then there's some comedic values to it, and it's just something else. It's something that you would probably have to see if you're very interested in it. And there's even a couple nods in this movie that are very comical. One of them is they nod on the fact of, okay, in real life, everybody who goes to a restaurant, like a Wendy's or 7-Eleven or something, and you get a straw, right? Remember how we were forced or we were given paper straws? If you went to a drive-through, like a fast food restaurant, if you went to a Wendy's or McDonald's or Burger King or whatever, you didn't get no plastic straws. You got those paper straws, the ones that they go soggy and they're all squishy and disgusting in your soft drink, in your soda and all. So there's a nod to that where they're like, nah, I carry my own straw. I don't do those paper straws. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool how they added that in there as like a little. Oh, yeah, okay. Now, I don't know if you want to say it's like a political thing, but I mean, the movie was in production around a time when Trump was he elected into office, so they didn't know anything about Trump permanently banning paper straws, by the time this movie came out. But it's an interesting nod. And then of course one other thing that's kind of a little spoiler I'm gonna throw out there, but I still don't know how I feel about this Easter egg, being Jordana Brewster, who's in this movie, but is also in the Fast and Furious franchise. So you got David Sawa, who plays Detective Zeke Hobbs, and Jordana Brewster plays Detective Jeanette Shaw. So there is a Easter egg nod in the movie where they introduced themselves to this girl, and it's like as in like Hobbs and Shaw, as in like the movie, and they're like, oh, we never seen it or never heard of it. So it was just like, yeah, one of those things where you really want to, you just nod your head, shake your head. And I don't know if there would have been too much laughter with it. I mean, after all, there is a lot of comedic value to it. There's a couple scenes where I could honestly say I chuckle a good bit at it. I mean, after all, the plot of the movie is this hard-eyed killer kills couples. He don't kill single people, he kills couples. There's a scene where our two main characters are being chased. They're not even a couple, and they look at the killer, and they're like, "We're not even a couple. Go kill someone else," and then runs off. So it's like there's very tongue-in-cheek humor in this movie, but I think where it falls real short for me is the romantic comedy scene, where it's like a romance drama. It's kind of like, it's like, okay, I gotta go. I love this guy. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do everything I can to be with him, or no, I don't want to be with him. And it's like back and forth kind of thing. And there's even a scene in the movie where she's talking to a friend of hers, and she's like, I met this guy. I really fell in love with him, but I don't know. And the friend's like, girl, go do it. This is your only chance. I'm like, Jesus Christ, where the hell did this movie turn into something like this, Something like The Notebook or something, But that's just the thing of this movie, It's got two plots intertwining with each other, and I want to say it does it really well. And I'm speaking for both audiences who actually like this movie or may hate this movie. So there's audiences out there that do like the way it kind of intertwines itself with two different genre types or two different movie types per se that are going on within this movie. And then of course there is a plot twist. I'm not going to give it away. But there is a plot twist, and it's something that you really need to pay attention to, in a sense. And I want to say this is one of those movies where I feel like, okay, at the very beginning, I could probably predict who the killer really is. And then you get like almost halfway through the movie, you're like, okay, he's not the killer, or she's not the killer, so it's somebody else. So this movie has a way of twisting its plot and then trying to play it off so cleverly toward the end, and then basically give you, the reason why this person is killing people, who's going around killing couples. There's a reason to it. and it's a real corny reason. It's very corny. It's almost bad as some of those movies where it's like, oh, I was just doing it because I felt like it, kind of thing. It's almost like that. And of course, there is a mid-credit scene that I didn't really get to check out, but I did read up on it, and I'm like, okay. So I think now they're going to set this up for a sequel, maybe a possible sequel, but it's not talked about yet. So the reception of this movie, as I was explaining, Rotten Tomatoes gave it an 82% of 141 critics' reviews are positive with an average rating of 6.3 out of 10. The website's consensus read that this is a mixture of gory slasher and sweet rom-com that ingenuously nails both formulas. Heart Eyes serves up a bloody Valentine that'll make the heart skip a beat. Metacritic, who weighed in on it with a 61 out of 100, indicated generally favorable reviews. And of course, audiences polled on CinemaScore with an average grade of B-. And PostTrack gave it a 68 overall positive score. So the movie's got a real positive score on it. And it's definitely liked by certain audiences out there. However, for me, I've seen it. It was somewhat enjoyable to me. Is it something that I would probably be interested in watching again? Not really, because for me, a majority of the movie, it just feels like a very shitty romantic comedy movie that is intertwined with what is, I would say, supposed to be a slasher horror, because that's how I perceived it, with watching the trailer and seeing the poster for it. You would think this was a movie almost kind of like Thanksgiving in a way, Okay, some horror movies nowadays, just like horror movies growing up, through the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, was going to infuse a little bit of comedic value to it. But this one, it really takes the cake, where it takes a slasher movie and it just blends it in with a romantic comedy, or as I explained to a buddy of mine, take like the shittiest romantic comedy and fuse it with something like Scream. That's basically what you get. It's like the Notebook X Scream. That's pretty much what this movie is. So I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there that have enjoyed it, and there's a lot of people out there that probably have hated it. I'm on the fence of, do I hate it? Do I like it? I'm just on that fence. I'm on that fence. If I ever watch it again, it's probably going to be with my fiance or somebody who wants to watch the movie. Other than that, personally, myself, this is something I wouldn't really sit down and watch again. I would watch something like Valentine or My Bloody Valentine over and over again. Those are movies that are worth watching on repeat. Something like this, maybe once or twice, do over. But in the end, this is something that it didn't really appeal to me. It might appeal to you guys, but my overall grade for Hard Eyes, I would probably give it. I'll give it the same, a 6.5 out of 10. I will give it a 6.5 out of 10. It's not completely horrible, but I did tell a couple people it's not for everybody. It's something that it's just there. If you want to check it out, if you want to see how good it really is, go to the theater or wait till it comes to your streaming platform. And that does it for today's episode of Cinemacast, guys. I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you for subscribing, for liking, and for checking out the rest of our content. If you guys really do enjoy it, like I said, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, follow us on social media, follow us on Discord to keep up to date with what streams that we put out there, with what content we put up there, and such, and many other updates as well. And that does it for today's episode. Today's feature was Hard Eyes. Guys, once again, thank you for joining me today. And until next time, we will catch you right back here at the cinema.